All right, we are recording. Well, I'm very excited. I'd like to. By the way, I'm Rafe Granger, and you're listening to a combo podcast. You're listening to the Rafe Granger podcast, and I'm very excited because I have my good friend, colleague, Tim Roberts here. Tim, welcome back.
Hey, Rafe, good to see you. We can actually see each other even though we're not in the
Yes,
same room. And to hear you, it's good to be back. It's been a while. Been
it
far
has
too
been a
long.
while, and this is exciting because this feed will be on the Rafe Granger podcast. And Tim, tell them about your podcast.
Yeah, so B&I and the Power of One, which is very much focused around our B&I members around the world and becoming effective. But this was like a spin-off thing. I forget how long ago we started this. Do you know now?
I want to say a year ago, but it's probably
No.
4 years ago
Oh,
because
it's got to be 5 or 6
we're
at this point. Yeah.
we're national director.
Yeah, and I was national director for almost 3. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's 4, maybe 5 years ago. Um, and it became kind of a popular bonus episode in the Power of one that still a lot of people talk about, still give recommendations on books and that kind of stuff. So I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. And if you're just joining me and new to the Rafe Granger podcast, this is going to be a hybrid podcast. It's covering all the things that I like. So it's going to be on networking, which now you have the master networker before you, which is Tim. All the stuff you hear me talk about, I just steal from him. No, that's not true. But but no, he's the mentor of personal networking. And that's what this segment's going to be about. But this podcast feed also we talked about entrepreneurs and what they do, and it also has my gaming side. Some of you may know me from the D6 Generation days when I had my miniature gaming and Euro style board gaming podcast, and sometimes you'll see some episodes on that. But this one is on something we call Tim and Rafe's Reads, and we had this idea, like Tim said, 4 or 5 years ago, where we both realized we like to read business books, and so we would get on the air and like this, and we would record a podcast about a business book. And one time I would pick it, and then one time Tim would pick it. Here's the cool thing. You don't have to have read the book for this podcast to make sense. One of us has read it, obviously. Sometimes the other person would have read it. But what's great about it is when the other person hasn't read it is they often have questions that you, the listener, may have when when listening to this podcast. So it's a coffee style chat about a book and designed to we also don't do a book chapter by chapter. It encourages you to go out and read the book if you want to. We're just going to kind of hit the highlights on it.
Yep.
Anything else make sense on that, Tim?
I think it's good. It's good to be back. And this month you picked the book, which makes my life a whole lot easier.
Good.
And
I'm
this
glad.
is actually, going to be honest with you, is a book I own, but I have not read. I think I've read pieces of it, but not really. Lindsay, my wife, read it. So it's in my house, but I
This
haven't
book
read it
that
yet.
we're doing today?
Yep. So
Okay.
based off of, and actually, while we're talking, I'm pretty sure I bought it on Audible, and I don't think I've even listened to it yet.
Wow.
So based off that, I'm kind of intrigued that you picked it. That's why as soon as you said, well, I think this book I have, I was like, done, because I've seen it. I have been aware of it. I have meant to either listen to it or buy it or read it, and I have not done that yet. I'm actually looking on my Audible thing right now.
Yeah. Well, let's get right to it then. The book is
Yeah.
called The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. And it's by an author that's new to me, Charles Duhigg. What I like about this is Mr. Duhigg is an investigative reporter. So what that means in my world is it's well written and easy to read. So even though there's a lot of science in it, and he references a lot of science, which I like because then it gives credibility, I found the book engaging to read and entertaining to read. Now, full disclosure, the book is in 3 sections, and the beginning one kind of talks about the individual. The second section talks about the power of habit with companies, and the third section talks about society. And I've only read up to with the individual.
Okay.
That's
So you
my
haven't got to the other
particular
two.
bent in working with, in my master classes or in my day job. I'm a business coach and also a business attorney. And so that's what really grabbed me and made me want to read this book. Tim, do you want to talk about what you thought it might cover, or should I just dive right into what it covers?
I would dive right in. I don't have this book on Audible, so I was wrong on that. So you've got a third of it, and maybe what we'll do is in a future one, as you get more, if you find it as intriguing and interesting, we'll dive into
That's a
the
good
other
idea.
segments or something, or maybe if I actually pick it up off the shelf and start reading it, we could do that. So let's dive right into the part around the individuals. The title is cool. Why do we do what we do in life and
Yes.
business? I think habits is for me, is always a big thing to be thinking about how they get created. And I usually notice my habits when they're really bad.
Yes.
So like right now, I was telling Lindsay the other day, I'm like, I like ever since we've been kind of locked in, my eating is like not good. It's
Right.
like
Someone told
I
me
know
the
I'm
other
in a
day.
habit of eating 3 Oreos a day, kind of thing. Like
Right.
I've got these habits going on that I don't like.
One of my yoga friends said to me the other day, he goes, "Oh, I've got the COVID 20."
Yeah, that's
You know
yeah.
what habit, a bad habit I had gotten into? It's a little embarrassing, but I'll share it with you. That's part of my podcast philosophy, by the way, is I just try to be as real as possible. And sometimes I forget who's listening, and then people come up to me and be like, "I really like how you shared X and Q," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I shared that."
Yeah,
But I've been drinking a lot more alcohol.
yeah, me too.
I don't view myself as a really big drinker. Like I don't, I was never a six pack a week kind of guy. I'm a little guy, and so I can have 2-3 beers in a week, or maybe 4 in a week. 2 on a Saturday, 2 on a Monday holiday weekend, and that's it. Dude, I noticed I was reaching for like the bourbon every night.
Hmm.
2 fingers of bourbon, right? To the point where my wife's like, it's a Wednesday night, and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, feel great. Why? She's like, man, you really been hitting the bottle. I'm like, no, I'm not a drinker. And then I had to look back and I'm like, yes, I am. For the past 2 weeks, I was drinking alcohol every single night, which is just not usual for me.
Yeah, I would say that was probably pretty similar. Like I used to drink, like we do like a bottle of wine on a Friday night kind of thing,
Type
and
of
then
thing. Yeah.
maybe I think something on the weekend if there was something going on, but if there wasn't, then there wasn't. And now, yeah, more just like, and now it's getting hot out, so some of it's like those seltzer drinks and those kind of things, but definitely more than normal. I wonder why that is, besides just being pent up home. It's not like it's a release. It's not like it's like, oh, I'm trying to get drunk. It's just, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I
I,
think
I
it's a habit creation, right? You just start doing it. And so this would be my first question, actually. Does it say anything in this book around the timeline it takes to create a habit? I've always heard the like 21 day or 21 time rule. Like
no,
you got to do something 21 times in a row for it to become a habit, kind of thing.
no, it doesn't. Let's get into that. It talks about 3 things. It talks about this thing called the habit loop, and
Okay.
it talks about how we form habits, what's actually happening in our brain, and then it gives us tools to say, well, now that we know what's happening in the brain, how can we change a habit or create a new habit? I don't recall, I didn't reread the book. I just read the sections that I wanted to highlight. I don't recall it saying how long it takes to form that habit, but there's definitely a time commitment to it. So,
Okay.
what they talk about with a habit is what the researchers have found is there's what they call a habit loop. There's a cue that happens, as in a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's an action, what I call an action, but it's a routine. And you want to think of it like a circle. If you were watching me through Zoom, you'd see my hands going from like the cue to the routine. And then there's the reward. And then the loop is, you see another trigger. And so what they found is by examining monkeys, they tapped into their brains where they'd watch their brain waves, and they put on a screen a bunch of visual figures, a triangle, a squiggly line, a blue circle, whatever. They put the monkey in the chair, and these were monkeys, not chimpanzees or but monkeys. And there'd be a feeding tube with like apple juice or blackberry. It was one monkey like blackberry juice, and they'd show the screen, and the theory was show the screen, monkey pulls a lever, gets the blackberry juice to create the cue, the thing on the screen, the routine, pull a lever, and the reward, the blackberry juice. When they put the monkey in, he doesn't give a crap about the figures on the screen. He wants to get out of the chair more than anything else. But through trial and error, he sort of does this, pulls the thing, gets a thing. Over the repeated history of this, the practice of the cue, the routine, he immediately, not immediately, I don't know the length of time to which he figures out, ooh, when I see the image, pull the lever, I get my reward. And that's the habit loop. And when they're watching his brain waves, when he got the reward, they saw a spike in his brain activity. So it'd sort of be like those squiggly lines, And then when the reward hit, his brain would spike, and they interpreted that to be he liked it or the brain liked it or however you want to think of it. Then what they found was the monkey began to exhibit, see the cue, see the shapes on the screen, pull the lever, and his brain would spike in anticipation of the reward even before the reward would hit. And that's what would establish what they called the craving. So that's why, I love donuts. And so it dawned on me the other day, I'm like, oh, what's happening is I'm driving by a Dunkin' Donuts, and they've done studies on this with people. I see the Dunkin' Donuts sign, that's the cue. The routine would be I'd go in, get a coffee, and buy a donut. I'll start to anticipate and want that sugary reward, just like the monkey's juice. And if I don't get it, then anger and depression will hit. So they found that when they took the juice away or they would dilute it, the monkey would exhibit, anxious behavior. Now, again, it's always interesting because how do we know what the monkey's thinking? But let's just put that aside for now. They would show the cue, he'd pull the lever, give him diluted blackberry juice, and he'd react in what we would call an angry or frustrated way in his chair. And so they're like, oh, and the brain spike would hit before the reward. So that's the craving part of habits.
Okay.
Questions on any of that so far before we go?
Nope. So it shifts from learning with the reward being what gets you to learn the habit, and then it's the craving, and then if you don't get it, it becomes a negative outcome.
Correct.
Okay.
You feel angry and frustrated.
Okay. And so that what creates that's the habit now is I do that to avoid the negative, or is it more to
that's
reward?
What's interesting is that prior habit theory thought that, change the reward and that'll create the new habit, or make it be that the reward is what will drive the new habit. And that's not what it is. What they found that changes habit is you keep the same cue, you keep the same reward, and you change the routine.
Okay. So instead of pulling the lever, they'd have to push a button or something?
Yes.
Okay.
I think of it in the following in my own life. It makes more sense when we get out of juice and monkeys. So I have
life is all about juice and monkeys.
right. I have this phenomenon now in my life. Again, more, too much information, right? If I eat processed breads, pizzas, subs, pastas, I will suddenly get a sugar crash or something. I will get so sleepy I can barely keep my eyes open. So I love bagels. Love them. My habit would be I'd go to downtown Portsmouth. I'd work for a little bit around 10 or 11. I'd be craving a donut a bagel, and I'd go get a bagel, and then I'd be incredibly sleepy. I'd be I got to take a nap. What's wrong with me? So I'm I got to stop eating these bagels. Dude, I could not stop eating bagels. It would be trigger, go to Portsmouth. I'm in Portsmouth, downtown. I want their yummy bagels at Bagel Works. Eat the bagels. I'm I told myself I wasn't going to eat this, and I am eating it, So I go, I'm going to try this habit loop thing. So what I figured out was I had to diagnose, and they give examples in the books of different people with habits that got broken. I had to figure out what is my reward. So the book helped me figure out the reward wasn't the bagel. The reward was how I felt eating the bagel. So I began to identify that I would go to work and I would work really solid for 3 hours because I can be easily distracted. So if I worked really solid for 3 hours, I'd be man, I feel good. I just put in a solid 3 hours worth of work. I didn't check emails. I wasn't distracted. I didn't yak on the phone. I'm going to go get that bagel. And it was a feeling reward, a feeling contentment, sort of full, because I also wouldn't eat breakfast. The feeling was a contentment feeling. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So I said, interesting. But the bagel would then make me sleepy, which I didn't want, the bad effect, like smoking a cigarette or something. I want to quit smoking. So I'm okay, the cue is I'm downtown. I've just done a bunch of work. Keep that. The reward, I have to change the reward, but keep the routine. The reward is feeling content. Is there some other food item that'll make me feel full and content? So most people will think, I got to quit eating bagel. I got to eat salads. I hate salads. Salads don't make me full. They don't make me feel content. They're cold. I don't like them. So I searched around for a food that I enjoyed to eat that made me feel happy, basically. That's a whole other issue, whether food should make us feel happy, but that's how I did it. Then, the acai bowls,
Yeah.
and they have the granola on them and the peanut butter and the blueberries. I made that my new reward. Now, many of you out there might be like, dude, why'd you do that? That's 1,000 calories and a bagel's 400. I wasn't doing it for calories. I was trying to change my habit, and acai bowls don't make me fall asleep.
There you
Probably
go.
because it's natural sugar compared to the carbohydrate sugar, is
Right.
my unscientific guess.
I would have no idea, but that's interesting. Okay, and then you felt like, so did it stick? Was that the?
Totally worked.
Yeah, interesting.
Totally worked. I'd be downtown, and I'm like, oh, I want a bagel. This was the dialogue in my head. Nope, you're not getting a bagel. You're going to walk to the Fresh Press, and you're going to buy an acai bowl. Me, no, you don't want that. You want a bagel. Nope, I'm doing it. So I kept the reward, feeling content, changed the routine. I changed bagel to acai bowl. And sure enough, I was able to stay away from the bagels. Like literally. It wasn't easy. I still mentally had to push myself to the acai bowl, but I would, after I ate the acai bowl, I'd go, hey, you feel the same as if you just ate a bagel. Your belly feels full and you have a contentment feeling in your body.
So that it's interesting that it took realizing that it wasn't the bagel, it was the feeling, like the psychological feeling behind the bagel. Because
Right.
otherwise, yeah, we would just all say something like, well, I just really like fill in the blank, right? Anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I
Interesting.
wanted to point out actually was prior to this book, I would have thought, well, my reward's the bagel. Like, I don't get it. How am I going
Right.
to, the whole point's the bagel. And I had to think beyond that. So like, for example, they did, they talked about a woman who habitually would bite her nails, especially over particular. So they had to diagnose, why are you biting your nails? It wasn't just, oh, I'm anxious. It would be with a certain trigger. And I guess it would be, she would start to think about a lot of things or something. And so the cue was the feeling to bite your nails. The changed routine for her was to get out a notebook and write down all the things that were on her mind. And that was the routine that replaced. And the reward was, oh, she said when she bit her nails, she felt accomplished. They diagnosed that it was an accomplishment feeling. I'm not a nail biter, so I can't quite comprehend that.
Yeah.
But that's why the new reward was she could look at her little mini notebook and feel accomplished.
Interesting.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah. And I mean, habits is just an interesting topic because there's so many in your life that you don't even think, like brushing your teeth is just a habit, right? And I'd
Oh,
heard that they in toothpaste, they put the stuff in it that makes it like the mint taste and all that was to feel to feel clean. Like you don't need it, but it made it
that's
feel clean. That gave you the reward that created the habit.
that's from this book.
Is
So they
it?
talked
Okay.
about how it's been used in marketing, and I could find it in the book, but we don't need to take the time. Let's call it Pepsodent or something. Pepsodent wasn't being sold and wasn't it wasn't selling. And so what this marketer figured out was it was the feeling of your teeth being clean, so that was the reward.
Right.
And
And that
so this
created the habit.
particular toothpaste didn't have that feeling. It was perfectly good toothpaste, and it cleaned perfectly well, but it didn't leave your mouth feeling tingly and minty and fresh,
Yep.
and it wasn't selling. They added that functionality, boom, off the shelves.
Interesting. What do you think is what was the biggest takeaway then for creating, like, let's just say you don't have a habit but you want to create a habit? Okay,
Yep.
so like I don't work out enough and I want to create the habit of working out. Like what is the process that they recommend to getting that to happen?
That's what's interesting about this book is it doesn't really, from what I'm remembering of it from before, it wasn't so much about the establishment of new habits. It was more how to break the old habit to turn into your new habit. So I guess I would answer it this way is the breaking of the old habit might be I'm not working out. And so I think under this book, it would be there's a cue that's happening what's making you then decide not to work out. So you have to identify what that cue is. And then there's something happening about not working out. I guess it's like, well, I can feel sedentary, or I don't know. You'd have to diagnose what the reward is. So you
Mm-hmm.
could keep the cue, keep the reward, but then change the routine.
Okay.
So let's see if we can diagnose that. So if you feel like, because It's funny, Tim. I wrote that down as like, I wrote down good on how to change out of a bad habit, but what if you want to create a brand new habit from scratch?
Right. That'd be my question. Yeah.
I wonder if it's maybe the answer is you have to diagnose what would make you feel good about the exercise. But we would say, oh, well, I'll feel tired or my muscles will feel spent or,
Yeah, you're gonna have to like. I guess the only way to do it is to reverse engineer it,
yeah,
right? Like, what is the feeling you want, and then how do you get it, and then what is the cue to make you do the thing that you need to do to get it?
yeah.
And I don't, I don't know. I mean, this is obviously not my area of
So
expertise, but
I think I would daisy chain that, because I thought about that same thing. Like, well, how do you create a brand new one from scratch? And then I'm going to talk about community because I think you'll dig that with BNI. I heard a podcast that talked about this concept called tiny habits, which sort of dovetails right into this. And the tiny habit methodology is, I guess this guy wanted to work out more and he just wouldn't do it. And so he was like, all right, before I take the shower, the cue, he didn't use these words, the cue, I'm going to do 2 push-ups, just 2. Not going to try to do 30. I'm not going to set a goal that I'm going to work up to 30. I'm going to go, oh, it's time for a shower. Boom, 2 push-ups. That's it. I've done my thing for the day. And I'm going to see where it leads. And sure enough, guess what? He was able to build up a push-up routine. Now he does 50 because
right.
he started with such a micro small thing. Now his concept is the tiny habit, but I'm like, ooh, that fits right into what Charles Duhigg was reporting about.
So that's right out of the book. Have you ever read the book, The One Thing?
No.
Oh, okay. So that's a book we have to talk about at some point.
Okay.
The One Thing, that's pretty much right out of that. So the One Thing is about accomplishing goals. I guess it's kind of about habits too. And it's been a while since I've read it, but it's about like accomplishing goals. And the problem with most people when they set goals and why they fail is because they just set these huge goals without the steps along the way. So the example would be, I want to get in good shape. So I know I want to get in good shape. So I know that means I need to eat right and exercise. So starting next week, I'm going to eat right. I'm going to exercise each day. And within 2 weeks, we fail. And the reason for that is because we don't create the little goals along the way. So he breaks it down like, all right, if you want to eat right 7 days a week, what's the one thing you need to do for that? Well, I need to meal prep, cook all my meals on Sunday. Okay. So in order to cook all your meals on Sunday, what's the one thing you need to do? I need to go grocery shopping on Saturday. All right, to go grocery shopping on Saturday, what's the one thing you need to do? And it keeps breaking it down. And it basically gets it down to like, in order to eat right 7 days a week, the first habit you have to create is getting up at 6 in the morning every day. Because that gave you the time to do X, that gave you the time to do Y, that gave you the time to do Z, so forth and so on. And you break your big goals down into like these one thing that you need to do first and foremost to get there. And then you work, because then they become the habit, right? So if I got to get up at 6 a.m. every day, then that's the first thing I got to accomplish is getting in the habit of getting up at 6 a.m. Then I can build on that because now I don't have to think about getting up at 6 in the morning. I just get up at 6 in the morning and now I can do this. And now that I do that, I don't have to think about that anymore. I just do it. So then I do the next thing and it's like this progress.
So that's cool because that made me think of with this book is that where I would fall down on that, we've talked about this, about getting up in the morning is, I don't have my headset on, so I'm not sure how much world noise is coming through, but
No, you're good.
is I won't get up at 6 or I'll get up at 6 a.m. for 4 days. So I was just thinking, how can we use with the habit loop for that?
Need an
And
reward.
hang on one second. I'm going to pause. Oh, can you pause?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So sorry for that delay there. I just switched to a headset. So, okay. So the cue would be having to get up in the morning and the reward would be having enough time.
Well, I think actually I would backstep it even further. So if you
Okay.
know, like, all right, I have to get into the habit of getting up at 6 in the morning every day
Yes.
in order to accomplish this much longer thing, then I got to do the habit formation of getting up at 6 in the morning, which would be like the alarm. I get up, I get something. You'd have to come up with some kind of reward for rewarding yourself to get up at 6 in the morning to the point where 6 in the morning is now your thing.
Is now. But see,
Right.
that's what's interesting
And then you
is
build on it. You say, okay, now that and it's going to take some kind of time. And again, I don't know why I've always heard like 21 days or whatever, but it's going to take some kind of amount of time where getting up at 6 in the morning now is just like, I'm in the habit of getting up at 6 in the morning. So I might not even need the alarm or whatever anymore because my body's in the habit. But some kind of cue, action, award based on this book, it sounds like. And then that becomes my habit. So whether that's cue habit, I get a cup of coffee, or I
That's
feel
what's interesting.
accomplished, or I feel whatever,
But that's the
then I build on to the next one.
but that's the creating the reward to get up, which they say fails.
Oh, really? Okay. You can't
Yeah.
create the award to get up. You have to, it just has to be an inherent thing.
Well, not create it, but they say to maybe it's just change the habit, because they say keep the cue, keep the reward, change the routine.
Right. But if there's no habit and then there's no reward, you'd have to kind of like create
Create
some
it.
kind of reward, right? Or, or maybe it's just the feeling of accomplishment. Like maybe it's enough that if you broke down we're combining books now, maybe if you were breaking it down, like the one thing tells you to break it down, right? Like, okay, I'm going to get in better shape next year. I turn 40, which is crazy. And so I'm going to get in better shape.
Wait till you turn 50.
Yeah, I can.
That's what happened to me. It's crazy.
I can wait.
When that happened, Tim?
Maybe it's like, okay, I'm going to break down this big goal into its pieces. And I know the first thing is I have to get up at 6 a.m. And by doing that, and I tell myself like, okay, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. for 14 straight days, because that's like my first goal to it. Maybe just getting up is the reward, right? Like I've accomplished these baby steps. And by the time I move on to step 2, step 1's now a habit. Now I'm on step 2. And maybe that's enough.
Tell me if you think I'm reading too much into this. So you remember you and I actually talked about this. We did a podcast. I wanted to start getting up in the morning. I was always a late sleeper. I could sleep till 11 a.m. I used to say. Yeah. Now I get up around 5:30 a.m. habitually. And I wanted to change that so I'd have more hours in my day. Maybe under the habit loop theory, it went like this. My old cue was the cue, I'm sleeping. The alarm goes off, that's the cue. The routine was I'd go, I don't want to get up now. I'd keep sleeping. And the reward was I was basically happy or felt content. Even though later I'd be like, oh, I wanted to get up. But in that moment, which is how I think they talk about it, in the moment, I changed the routine without realizing using this language. I don't know if I told you this, but I started to get up to play a video game. So I love to play video games. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of getting up and writing in my journal, which was the real goal, or getting up and reading a book, which was the real goal, I'm not getting up. Would I get up for a video game? But that could be easily argued as the reward. But
that's
the routine that changed was getting up.
Right. And then maybe you change you eventually change the reward because you get bored of the game or whatever.
That's exactly what happened.
It's the ultimate, like we talk about this at BNI all the time. I love the people who tell me like, I'm not a morning person. Yet if I told them like name XYZ, like you get to go play golf this morning, or you get to go do this crazy thing that you love to do, you would get up freaking excited. It's like anything. Who gets up excited at 3:30 in the morning? The person going to the airport on their dream vacation does, right? Because there's a reason to get up at 3:30 in the morning. Yep. So you gave yourself a reason to get up at 5:30, and then 5:30 just became a habit. Now the
That's
reason
exactly
doesn't matter as much anymore because you've just created this. It's like, again, how many of us really realize the feeling in our mouth after we brush our teeth is the reason we brush our teeth? It's not the reason we brush our teeth anymore. It's just because that's what we do. I brush my teeth every morning. I brush my teeth every night. And it just becomes a habit to reward. And that's what I was going to ask is like, does the reward no longer matter really after a long enough period of time because it just becomes who you are?
Well, if we stick to the language of this, you're right about that. Sometimes I play video games. Sometimes I just sit and ponder and have coffee. Sometimes I talk with my wife. But the habit of getting up early, I can't sleep till 11 if I wanted to. Like maybe I'll sleep till 6:30 or something. But that has become its own intrinsic reward of that time is such bonus time. That's become the reward. And it is habit, just like brushing my teeth. I don't have to trick myself or think myself. My body actually will wake up even without an alarm
anymore. Yeah, right.
No.
Exactly. Because you just got into the habit of it, but you needed the original reward to create it. So I think that's probably it. I mean, just armchair psychologist. I would say that was it, right? Like you gave yourself the reason to enough times that it just became who you are.
So I wonder what counsel we could give people if they're like, I'm going to start running. Like I hate running. Like
I hate running, but I've started running. I freaking hate running.
So I wonder what the reward, like if it was, I've tried this before. We're like, I'm going to run and then play a video game. Nope, doesn't stick.
I don't know. I mean, for me, I still kind of hate running, but like I got forced into it, really. I'll be completely honest. I had never run. before ever. Like maybe in high school when we trained for hockey, but that was 20 something years ago. So I've recently started running only because my Peloton broke and they won't come to service it during this
I just got a
environment.
Peloton. I love that thing.
That thing's amazing.
It's amazing.
I would use it 100 times more than running, but it broke. So, and they can't come fix it right now. So, I mean, but by side tangent, I had a Peloton the first year Peloton ever came out. So much so that when it broke, even though it's way out of warranty, they told me they'd come and fix it for free out of loyalty for being a person for so long.
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Except for they won't come do it yet, but eventually. So anyways, I started running because I was like, I literally don't have anything else I can do right now. I mean, I could do exercises at home, but I get too bored with that.
You could ride a bike.
So, yeah, but I'd have to go buy a bike, and I can't even figure out where to buy a bike right now.
I'm in the same problem. Yep.
And I don't feel comfortable riding a bike on the street anyways.
I don't either. I feel like I'm going to get run over.
Yeah, I'd much rather run. I can run off the side of the road if I see a car. Can't bike off the side of the road.
Right.
So, anyway, so that's what started it. But I can tell you what's kept me going is the feeling after, right? Like, so my habit now when I run is I'll run and then I come home and I sit on my chair on my deck for like 15 minutes with the headphones still on, listening, just sit there. And like, that's kind of my reward is to like, I feel accomplished and I feel relaxed in that moment. And so when I'm running now, like, that's what I look forward to is like getting home, grabbing the bottle of Powerade and just plopping my ass in that chair. And like, because to me, it's like, I've earned this moment. I've earned to be, nobody can come and tell me like, what are you doing just sitting out here? Because they know like, I just ran 3 miles. That's why I'm sitting here. I've earned this moment of time and I feel better throughout the day. Like I feel way better about myself and just like my mood and everything's way better throughout the day. And I've noticed that that's another benefit. So.
I realize I'm shoehorning this just for the purpose of this lecture, but this podcast, but I find it interesting because I'm like, see, that's an example of Tim changed the reward. And that's exactly what the book says didn't work. Now, the reason why I'm harping on that is they talk about it with alcoholics. And they said that the old research was, hey, replace that drink with a different reward. Go get an ice cream cone. Fails. And
yeah, but I guess it's a matter of want, though, right? Like maybe first of all, I didn't change an award because I still get the reward that I'm getting from.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't change it. Actually, it's actually fitting this. You changed the routine, which was sitting in the chair and enjoying, which is what suggesting works.
Right. Well, I've changed the running from biking, right, kind of thing.
Yeah,
like I still feel I'm getting that feeling of accomplishment. Like
correct.
As much as I hate running, I feel way better about myself when I'm done that I did it. And thus better all day. And that simple reward is that 15 minutes of really feeling it because like I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to do shit for 15 minutes.
I think in the language of this book, though, they would call that you changed the routine. The routine became a run and then sitting for 15 minutes to get that same reward of the feeling of contentment, like my bagel eating.
Yeah.
Just in the language of the book. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, no. I think that makes sense. But again, if I wasn't doing anything, then the reward needs to be created to do it.
Yeah,
right? Because like there is no reward to change either, right? And so the want to has to be big enough. Like, so the alcoholic to ice cream is like that's not the same reward. It's not the same outcome. So you're not changing. You're changing something that they desire for something that they don't desire. It's almost punishment, and that would seem to it'd be like taking that monkey who's getting blackberry juice and start giving him water.
Yes. That's what they talk about with what they found the research with alcoholics was they used to think it was change the reward. Yeah. But then what they did was they diagnosed, and everybody who drinks alcohol to the point where it's a problem had a different reason, the reward. Some it was social, some it was how it made them feel, some it was whatever. So let's say that I'm an alcoholic because I'm like, well, I like to go to the bars. I'd be with people. I'd be surrounded with people. People paid attention to me. They'd say my name when I come in. They then found what's the new routine that didn't involve a bar. This is going to be corny, but go to a B&I meeting or something. Yeah,
or join a gym or something like that.
Join a gym or join a yoga studio where people know you. And then, voila, that would work. So the person would get cued. I just got done with work. The word was, I want to feel like people notice me. The routine was I'd go to a bar. Oh, now I'm going to go to that yoga studio that knows me. And that's what would stick with people. Now, get this. Check this out. You're going to love this. They then found, in specific to AA, they began to look at why in the heck does AA work? It's not a scientific theory. It's not run by scientists. Why does AA have this? The researchers began to wonder, why is it so effective? And this is what researchers began to figure out. I'm going to read you a chapter. I found this to be fascinating. Okay. Um, the researchers the researchers found out that it was the person's belief in and of itself that would make the difference. So people would join AA. They'd sort of be like, I got to do something. This will work for me. Just the belief itself. They said, and also what would happen is when they would put people in the meetings, people would look around and go, well, if it worked for that guy, it'll work for me.
Yep.
Was also a positive trait of why it began to work. And so I can't find the section I want to find. Hold on. I must have bookmarked the wrong page, but I remember that in essence of it. Here it is. We know that a habit cannot be eradicated. It must instead be replaced. And we know that habits are most malleable when the golden rule of habit change is applied. If we keep the same cue and the same reward, a new routine can be inserted. But that's not enough. For habit to stay changed, people must believe the change is possible. And most often, that belief only emerges with the help of a group.
Okay. Yeah.
They said,
power of community.
The evidence is clear. If you want to change a habit, you must find an alternative routine, and your odds of success go up dramatically when you commit to changing as part of a group. Belief is essential, and it grows out of communal experience, even if that community is only as large as two people.
I 1,000% agree with that on multiple levels. Personally, like I started working out last year more, and the reason was because I got a trainer. Like I've always told people, like, I would get a train. Why I like the Peloton? Why an expensive Peloton bike versus just a stationary bike? Because even though it's remote, there's like accountability of somebody pushing you and telling you what to do. That's like a big thing for me. Like I will never push myself as hard as I will when somebody else is in the room. So
Yes.
for me with the Peloton, the big thing was, and we'll have to do this when mine is fixed, is like I'm on chat groups with a couple other people that have it, and it was just to like we'd push each other. Like, hey, I just set a new PR. Hey, I just took the class you did and I outdid you. Like that would push me far. Ever since we started doing that, almost every other ride I was setting PRs, which I hadn't
Personal
set
record.
in like, yeah, personal record, which I hadn't set for years on that thing because I just wouldn't push myself as hard as I could push myself until I was chasing somebody or trying to prove something with somebody or try to get that win. Like I'm super competitive. I know that's one of my habits is like, so I need to win. The personal trainer, I would push myself harder, not just because that trainer was there telling me to push myself, but because I wouldn't let myself do less than I did the last time. Like I always needed the approval. Yeah, I mean, I think that is true. And so in BNI, you mentioned like this is true too, right? So one of the reasons people join BNI is because they go to a meeting and they see it. So I've said you can never sell BNI over the phone. They have to see it. And part of seeing it is part of watching people and hearing the results they're getting from it and saying, well, if it can work for them, it can work for me kind of mentality.
I thought of that when I was
that together.
reviewing this. I want to talk about the Peloton too. Part of what you listeners who've coming back to this will know, Tim and I like to take Cal Pass. You never know. We might start talking about Star Wars in the middle of some podcast. We like those. We encourage those. And so we'll go on a Peloton Cal Path. But that's what I've noticed a big change with my master classes. Since I've last spoke to you now, both of my master classes are full with 16 entrepreneurs. We meet once a month. There's 2 groups. And the change I'm seeing is phenomenal. I'm talking about people that are changing their ROI from $85,000 a year to $250,000 a year. And that change is occurring in the group. And when I read that, I'm like, oh, that explains it. And she'll admit, this person will admit, like, yeah, I couldn't do it without the group. The group is just for all the reasons why we know groups are supportive. But I find that fascinating to think, oh, it's a necessary ingredient. So for those of us that are trying to change our habits, maybe that's something we need to remember. We've got to elicit a friend or a wife or our husband or somebody to help us be part of our community.
And some of them can't be. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Lindsay, my wife, she started working out like crazy, like completely transformed her physique and life, mostly because she found this gym with like group classes.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and then that became her community. She's got more friends from there than she ever had in this town that she's not from before, and it's like
Yeah.
her place and her people. And I think that's the driving factor more than like the class itself. It's the fact that she wants to go every day because it's the place and the people.
And I was thinking as regards to BNI too. I mean, that's
Yeah.
probably one of the reasons why BNI is so successful. In essence, we're changing habits, we're creating habits for personal networking. And oh, guess what? We're doing it in a group.
Yep.
So isn't
And it
that
can
neat?
work the other way though. It can work the other way,
Oh, how
right?
so?
This is one of the, well, so when you talk about habit creation, one of the biggest things with any network, but I talk about BNI in specific with this, is there's a huge thing I'm trying to articulate this right. There's something at play that can be either a massive advantage or a massive disadvantage. And that is the fact that BNI, I've always said this, is kind of tied this all together pretty funny, that BNI is very much a monkey see, monkey do organization. So what
Okay.
that means is when you look at a chapter, we've got chapters like in Florida, 98 people and 98% of them in the green in the power of one. Okay. And the reason for that is because every time they bring in a new person, that new person sees what everybody's doing and just goes, oh, that's what we do. So that's what they do. Thus, they create these habits that are to their advantage, right? They are habitually doing one-to-ones every week and doing these things because that's what everybody does. That's what the community does. So the community can kind of set the habit for the individuals. That's hugely powerful when used correctly. It's a massive disadvantage when it goes the other way. When you have a community that is lackadaisical and BNI, doesn't want to do those kind of things, isn't engaged in one-to-ones, well, every new member you bring in becomes just like the rest. So, it's like one of those things where I talk to chapters like, how many of you want new members coming in who are more engaged, more, better members? And everybody raise their hands. I said, great. The way you do that is by you doing it first. Because if you don't do it first, it will never happen with the new person. But if you do
Well,
it first, if you create those habits as a community, it becomes easy because every new member just automatically does it.
I mean, I guess you're illustrating the author's point, which is
Right.
if you want to increase the odds of a habit being formed, do it in a community.
Yeah, but you got to make sure that community is doing the habit you want it
Well, I
to
was going
do.
to say,
I
I
mean,
think,
drinking could be the other way, right? Like you
yeah,
could
I was just
really
thinking
start
that.
drinking more if you're just hanging out with buddies who drink all the time.
Exactly. I was just thinking that. So I guess that what it really says is that we want to change our habits, we have to make sure that the community we pick is mirroring the change we want.
Right. Yeah, it's
Would
one of
be
those theories of always surround yourself with people who are doing better than you are.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Or at a minimum exhibiting the behaviors you want. If
right.
you can, I guess as an alcoholic, we would consider that better, right? Oh, Tim's sober, I'm not,
Right. Whatever. Yeah. However you define it. But like if I wanted to take my business from, X to Y, I'm better hanging out with people making Y than I am people making X.
That would, another reason why that. So, so that's the book Habit.
Yeah, it's very good.
Is that
I think
interesting?
It's cool. I think it is because and it'll be interesting to read more of what it talks about with society and stuff too. But it's logical. I think it's still challenging, right? And I think I like the idea of don't think of just the reward as a tangible reward. It might be something deeper, right? So for you, it was like feeling full and feeling
and content.
For me with running, it's feeling like I accomplished something. It's not the I don't know, whatever, the runner's high or the pain in the legs that I have, like whatever it is, but figure that out and then surround yourself with people who are driven by the same thing. It's only going to take you to another level.
Yeah. Peloton.
Yeah.
My experience with it is, first of all, it's awesome. And anybody listening to this, and we're not, I should own stock, but I'm not, Peloton is not endorsing this podcast yet. We should reach out to them.
I can give you a referral code though, if you want to buy one.
Okay, there we go.
I should sell Peloton. I mean, it's a thing in BNI now because of me, because I would talk about Peloton so much that I've got like 8 people on it.
Here's been my experience with it is, my wife wanted to look into it. She's more athletic minded than I am and more, says I need to do something kind of thing. I'm like, I'm good playing video games and drinking too much, I guess. And so, but in the end, I'm like, I can't keep this up. So we looked at it. I'm like, why am I going to pay, this amount of money? It's like a couple grand or a couple hundred a month to own a bike that I can get on Craigslist for $65 free. I could probably take it off somebody's hand. And the Peloton app lets you have it on your iPad. You can pay a little low monthly subscription, ride your exercise bike, and watch a Peloton app. Yeah, don't do that. Just get a freaking Peloton. So we watched like 3 homeowner videos. These weren't Peloton people. They were just you, Tim, and they're like, I didn't want to get one. I got it and I love it. So I'm like, okay. So I got it. I love it. Here's what I love about it. I am not a competitive person, could care less about the leaderboard. So I thought, all of a sudden, I'll be riding along and I'm like, wait a minute, why did I just drop in position? And
Yep.
I will pedal harder. I also like the stupid achievements that they have in
Mm-hmm.
there. Okay, they've gamified it. You and I have talked about gamification.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I haven't hit my 25th ride yet, not 25th consecutive. Just I haven't got, no, I did get my 25th consecutive medal, not consecutive, 25th ride. And I felt accomplished.
Yep.
Now I want to get my next medal, my next achievement. Those dang Peloton instructors, I thought, how are they going to teach me through a screen? Dude, they are pros at what they do. I feel like they're teaching me.
Yep.
I see other cyclists there. I know they're not teaching to me, and yet they're teaching to me. They're motivating me. They're telling me things that make me pedal harder, pedal faster, go up that hill that I don't want to go up. It's amazing.
And you get it. You do live classes or mostly on demand?
I haven't done a live one yet.
All right, so you do a live one, and then the second they call out your name, you're hooked. You're done. Like,
Oh,
because
wow.
they will
Okay.
call out live. Like it's happened a few times.
I've seen that.
So I think the gamification to me is a big piece of it. It's been why BNI member. A lot of BNI people are on now on the Peloton is because for 3 years I was yelling that BNI needs to copy Peloton in its tech. Like I think one of the issues with BNI is that we don't gamify it enough. And so, like, if I was to redo BNI's tech, it would be in the sense of like a Peloton. When you log into BNI Connect, it would look like Peloton does, and it would have a calendar, and it would show you like, all right, here's all the days you've done one-to-ones, and you like click on it, and you can see your stats from the one-to-one. But then it would also have videos linked to it for trainings on one-to-one. So if you're like, oh, I've done one-to-ones, oh, here's some suggested video trainings. But then you could do the badging the same way in there. Hey, you've done 5 one-to-ones, 10 one-to-ones, 25 one-to-ones, 100 one-to-ones, so forth. You could do the same thing for sponsoring new members. You could do the same thing for passing referrals. You could do the same thing for receiving referrals. You can do set these like benchmarks and gamify the crap out of it
Yep.
and make it more the tech more conducive to you, the user, versus the database that it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Gamification is huge. I mean, you and I obviously aren't the only ones thinking of that, but I do find, I think it's a combination of the teachers are like, it's amazing to me, Tim. They'll be like, throw your shoulders back. I'm like, oh, yeah, I am all hunched over.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah, they
as if
just know the common mistakes
they
kind of
just
thing. Yeah.
know.
Butt
And
back, hips back. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm really enjoying my Peloton. I've done classes, but they're all the pre-recorded. Here's the other thing I like about
I
it, Tim.
mostly do those too, just because I ride like whenever my
Yeah.
time was in like with ever a class. But every once in a while, if you do a live class, and it'll just take once for them to call you out, and you're like on a high during that rest of that class.
I like the little high five feature. Have you done that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So people who don't know about Peloton, so it'll show you who you're riding with, even if it's a pre-recorded class. So a
Right.
lot of times I'll click the button that says who's here now. There'll be 12 other cyclists. I'll see somebody that says Boston Mom, 1980 or something. That's her screen name. What I love about it is it's private, it's anonymous. I can click on her or click on him. It says Boston Bruins, and I can be like boop and touch him, and he gets a little high five signal up on his screen. And what I love about it is I'm not texting him, I'm not chatting him. It's not like I'm gonna strike up a conversation, but it can be like, hey, you go, buddy. So I like it when I'm like riding along and all of a sudden I'll get a high five from somebody. I'm like, hey, that was cool.
I like it when when you connect with people and friends, you can do the same rides they did, and you can watch
Oh,
their stats like as if they're like where they were each second. Like it's like they're riding with you,
I
but they're
haven't done
not.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can take a class, and you can take one of my classes, and you start it. You can click filter by friends, so just show you and me, and it would show you where I was each second of that ride, as if I was riding with you, even though mine was recorded 2 days ago, 2 months ago, or 2 years ago.
Huh.
And so it's like you're racing me even though I'm not there.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh,
where we started getting like competitive with the shit, like taking videos after of like, I just whooped your ass kind of stuff. And like, that was like, but that kept you going, right? Because
yeah.
I rode the bike and then I stopped riding the bike for a long time just because I got busy and everything else. And what got me mostly back was 3 or 4 people from BNI on there, and just challenging each other. And it literally started because I was in Charlotte and somebody had gotten it, and they were in Pennsylvania, whatever, but they were talking about how they got it and they ride it. And I was like, no way. And they're like, I'll kill you on this. And I was like, there's no way. And trash talking remotely with other people. So I was at like with a bunch of people and they were telling them how they'd beat me. And I was like, no, they won't. I was like, because my name, by the way, in Peloton is dying on bike. And I was like, the reason it's called that is because I said, I will always beat you. And they're like, no way. And I was like, no, I know. You know how I know? They go, why? I go, because I'm willing to die on this bike to beat you, and you're not willing to go that far.
Wow.
And I was like, so I will kill you. And then like, so it got me back on the bike. And then we were like on the bike a lot.
My,
bike broke.
what is, okay. So now I can follow you. Mine is Curious G4.
Yeah.
I didn't set
so
it
you'll
up.
have to
My
find
wife
me
did.
because I haven't been on it, but
All right.
Lindsay's on there. Bunch of people are on there. It's that community piece, right?
So I'm wondering why they're not fixing it. I mean, I just got some furniture ordered the other day. They wore their masks.
They're not sending their service people out yet. Once they can, and I don't know if New Hampshire that will be in June or whatever, but once they can, we're on the list. But yeah, they just weren't doing any service calls. They were doing deliveries of bikes, but only like doorstep deliveries. Like they deliver it to your garage door, and then you have to take it in and build it. And this is like the bearings and the wheels completely seized up, so it's like a
oh geez,
like
you're not moving
so
on that thing.
I'm not like messing around with it. So.
Well, since Tim and I talked about exercise, and if you've been wanting to exercise, and if you can get a Peloton, which you can hard to do, I recommend it. Tim recommends it. That's the other thing I like about it, Tim. Is like literally right now I can hang up with you, throw my shoes on, and I'm biking. I don't have to worry about being run over. I don't have to get my bike out. It's made me want to bike in real life though, but I don't want to get run over.
Yeah, that's my thing too. All right, well, go create that habit.
All right.
All right, buddy.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. And we usually used to do these about once a month, so we'll see if we can schedule another one. Yeah. And check out me, Raef Granger, on the Raef Granger podcast, and check out Tim's podcast, which is BNI and the Power of One. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.